A pair of hikers from Rhode Island have been rescued after getting stuck in treacherous terrain on Mount Washington.
At least one hiker expressed they were feeling symptoms of hypothermia. Officials tell us the hikers were brought to safety around 10 p.m. and thankfully there were no injuries.
This was no drill, but a real-life emergency deep in the White Mountains.
Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the Live Free or Die state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, occasionally including the counties of Belknap, something like that, and Coos, or is it Coos County? Whatever. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
And we are live. It is Stomp flying solo from behind the granite microphone at the original Woodpecker Studio in the great state of New Hampshire in the town of Thornton by the WD. Mike is in London attending the Doctor Who cosplay convention, so he's having a good time out there. We're going to do something new tonight. We have two SLASR throwbacks from the great year of 2021. We're going to hear from the first time Chris B.B. Boughton from Solo came on, and that was way back in episode 21, which goes way back to July of 2021. And then after that, we're going to hear from Ken Bosse, humorist and author, from episode 36. He showed up, I think it was November of 2021. And of course, Ken is going to be joining us at the Full Conditions event coming up on November 16th at Reckless for those that got tickets. So this will be a lot of fun. We'll just check out those two old broadcasts. And first, I just want to welcome back Christina Folsick. She's got her new endurance coaching outfit happening, and it's called Wild Raven Endurance Coaching. So here it is.
Hi, I'm Christina from Wild Raven Endurance Coaching. I work with athletes of all levels, from hikers to triathletes, helping you reach your goals with personalized guidance. With years of experience hiking, mountain biking, and trail running across New England, I also have a deep knowledge of the New Hampshire 4,000 footers and the surrounding trails. Whether you're a beginner hiker or a seasoned athlete, I'll guide you towards your goals, reducing injury risk and improving your performance through smart, tailored coaching. Are you looking to transition from hiking to mountain running? I'm here to make that journey easier too. My approach combines strength training, mindfulness, and life balance on and off the trail. Let me help you find more joy in your sport while getting stronger and healthier along the way. Visit www.coaching.christinafolsick.com and start your adventure today.
All right. Thank you, Christina. Glad to have you back. So let's hear from Chris Beebe.
It's time for SLASR's Guest of the Week.
So you're funny, BB. I met this kid. I'm actually your student, which is really cool. I got to sit through the Wilderness First Aid 2 years back now, so we'll be redoing that soon enough. And you taught the class for PEMI, which is fantastic. This kid crashed on my couch, which is probably the beginning of this crazy relationship here. And but I love this kid. He's great. He's really funny. He's a fantastic educator. A hell of a lot of certificates and knowledge, and we're really glad to have you here talking.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. So I guess we should start with you. I mean, you mentioned Kentucky and stuff like that. If you can walk us through where you came from and how you ended up here, and then go into Solo and tell us a little bit about them and what you're doing for them, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, it was sort of a long, winding road. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and then moved from there, took a train out west to work with a Western swing band when I was 18. and lived in LA for a while, then Philadelphia, which is, that trifecta is where I got the bulk of my wilderness exposure. So none. And got involved in disaster response work, specifically with animals. So between dealing with veterinarians and growing up in Chinatown in Washington, D.C., I think it's a pretty clear path to the White Mountains. And I was actually living in Haiti, training veterinarians, and thought, since I had no idea where a hospital was, getting some medical training wouldn't be a bad idea. And had a friend say, well, you should do a wilderness EMT program. It would be a really cool option. I said, I have no idea what that is, but I'd love to check it out. And honestly, at the time, my only knowledge of New England was Irving Berlin's White Christmas and the Polar Bear Coca-Cola commercials. That was the sum total of what I knew of New England to be. And so I was like, well, that place looks great. So I would love to check, the other option was Wyoming. So it's Cowtown or White Christmas. So I came up to Solo, did my EMT, fell in love with the program, fell in love with the area, and had was working down in Kentucky at that point, and was coming up to Solo periodically to teach over the summers, and just loved it. And finally was lucky enough that at one point they said, so when are you planning on staying up here? Which is, if you've never had the opportunity to suggest an idea to a better half at the time, and now an ex, and this may explain that, and go, hey, what if we move to the mountains? And have them, I love that idea. And then like 3 weeks later go, hey, so about that, you have a steady job, I don't, but what if we just drop all that and I move up here? Which that went over wonderfully. But we came up to New England, and I started working for Solo full time. The idea of doing search and rescue was something that didn't exist to me any other place I'd lived. You don't have, search and rescue in DC. It's just called like a missing person. And a friend of mine through Solo, Bill Otten, who's been sort of instrumental in the search and rescue community for decades now, sort of coached me along and got me involved in my first search and rescue team, and sort of introduced me to the community, and also has been a mentor to me at Solo for years. So that was, in a nutshell, my very convoluted route to winding up both in New Hampshire at Solo and with the SAR work that I do now.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been at Solo?
I've been teaching for Solo for 10 years now.
Wow, that's excellent.
Started in 2011, and so this makes my decade anniversary.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about your credentials?
Sure. So I, through my previous work doing disaster work, had been trained in swiftwater rescue, technical ropes, high angle rescue, and then some specialty offshoots with sort of animals in disaster and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in Kentucky, went through the fire academy there and was trained as a firefighter and hazmat operations, incident safety officer, have done training with the National Guard and helicopter and landing zone operations, and
pretty much everything.
I have done wildland fire training. Now I'm in paramedic school. In between that, did my actual undergrad and some graduate work in wildlife conservation, and spend a good chunk of time out in Southern Africa training anti-poaching units in first aid.
Wow. Now, how about EMT? Are you an EMT?
Yeah, so I was an EMT and wilderness EMT for years until about 2018, and then bumped it up a notch to what's called an advanced EMT. The main perk of that, especially in the search and rescue community, is the ability to do IV fluid administration. If we have someone who's dehydrated or a diabetic emergency. Mm-hmm. and am currently in the last few months, which is what I've been saying for about 8 months, but it's now actually down to the last few months of paramedic school. And my plan is to, after that, not think about medicine, and I'm not even going to take Advil for like 6 months. I'm going to catch up on Netflix. I may not leave the house.
I hear that's a bear of a test.
Well, the best part is there's like 4 of them. There's the Portuguese man o' war. That's, one creature that's made out of like 6 symbiotic organisms, 5 maybe.
That's what this is.
That's a paramedic program. You have to get like 6 individual credentials to qualify for this other big credential.
Yeah.
And it's both anticlimactic and deflating when they go, "Hey, you passed your exam on PHTLS," and at that point you're like, I don't care, I don't remember, I'm not sure that I was there for it. I know I have another one next week that has other letters that I can't remember the name of at this point that all just qualify me to take yet another exam.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's sort of a blur. When I graduate, if I graduate in November, if someone has a splinter, they're on their own.
Right. So how do you incorporate your knowledge with what Solo expects, and what do you guys teach, or what's sort of the core curriculum between those different certificates?
So one of the nice things about wilderness medicine, and one of the things that drew me to it, is that twofold. One, it developed just as sort of for anyone who's not familiar with it, it developed because a lot of what we have as pre-hospital care protocols are sort of designed around the idea that someone's going to be picked up and arrive in front of a doctor within about 30 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. And so, in a wilderness setting, that goes out the window. That a protocol designed for 30 minutes can't be applied to a patient who needs care for 5 hours or 3 hours or even 2 hours. And so a lot of it came down to treating the patient, not treating the numbers or treating a protocol, which I think is just holistically a more appropriate technique to take. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is that with teaching at Solo, I think in general, people in the United States, at least this has been my experience, have so much concern about making things worse by stepping in. Yep. That it freezes them.
Liability.
And so one thing that's been really advantageous to me with advancing my medical training is when someone goes, "But couldn't this happen? Couldn't that happen?" I know when I first started teaching, a lot of my answers were based on what I'd heard other people tell me. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of nice to go, no, I can speak from what is considered like common medical practice from working in an emergency room or working on the ambulance or having done it for 10 years and seeing different trends evolve in medical care. Mm-hmm. And for me, the rewarding part is being able to tell someone like, hey, there's a really technical answer as to why that's not an issue. We don't even need to get that technical, but how much can I give you to just reassure you that you following your gut and trying to help someone is probably the best thing for them. Yeah. And so I feel like it's given me a few more tools in my tool chest to be able to give folks the confidence to step in and lend a hand.
How about, I know this would take a weekend or a week, but can we just go over a couple different things, like how do you deal with orthopedic injuries or sprains, fractures, just briefly in the wilderness? Maybe we'll touch upon a couple of the highlights that you guys might cover at Solo.
I think one of the relaxing components about diagnosing or treating an orthopedic injury in the woods is that, to me, the most important thing is to just be 100% sure what you're treating for, not 100% sure that you're correct about what the injury is. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is if I have someone, I think you and I both have probably carried out way more patients treating them for fracture injuries, and then found out that they had a bad sprain, strain, or a ligament tear or something. Sure. But looking at someone and going, well, how bad's your pain? Do you think you can stand on it? Mm-hmm. What did it feel like? Have you ever had an injury that felt anything like this? Oh, you have? This feels worse? Okay, well, I'm 100% sure now that I'm going to treat you as though you could have broken this. And maybe it means more wear and tear on my back, but it's going to be less wear and tear on your injury.
Yeah.
And then we get them out and someone goes, yeah, it turns out they just had a sprain. You go, well, whatever.
Yeah, just in case.
So, BB, one question I have is I've been, for probably about 2 or 3 years now, anytime there's a media report about a search and rescue, like I just log it in a spreadsheet and sort of keep track of it. And I've categorized common issues. And I would say probably I'd say about 40% of the time, the search and rescue causes a lower leg injury. So probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started people would commonly on social media say oh, you have to, carry the 10 essentials. And I started, anytime I saw that, I would always throw in, I'd say, I honestly think a field splint should be part of anybody's 10 or 11 essentials, just because I felt like you'd see these lower leg injuries happen so commonly. Do you've got a lot more experience than I have. I'm just looking at, news reports in a spreadsheet that I put together. But can you comment a little bit about your thoughts? Do you see a lot of rescues that you go on that probably could have been avoided with somebody having knowledge of a field splint?
Less so a field splint. And honestly, I think if the majority of the rescues that I've been on, when people have musculoskeletal injuries, it's on the hike out. Mm-hmm. They're fatigued and you're going downhill. So you're dealing with gravity and low fuel. And I think, honestly, if people took the time to sort of calorie load once they got up, everyone wants to get to the top. You want, whether it's because you're going for time or because you just want to get the uphill part over with. You burn through a lot getting up there, and then we always have it in our head the hike down's easy. The hike is down is the part that's nature's bringing you to your knees. Mm-hmm. And I think if people took more time to go, okay, we got up, now let's sit for 20 or 30 minutes, calm down, relax, and eat something, so that on the hike down, we're actually more juiced up and able to sustain ourselves. I think it would actually reduce some of the likelihood of people taking a tumble.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. So you're 2 steps before. My thought is okay, the injury's happening. Let's address it. But you're sort of taking 2 steps even before that to say, you put yourself in the space where you'd be susceptible to a leg injury by not treating your calorie intake, and you're sort of not as sharp as you should be coming down.
Yeah, I mean, without getting onto too long of a rant on this, I think one thing that a lot of people miss, I think there's a very fine line between what's an emergency and what is an occurrence that just makes for a good story later. And it's just a culmination of small factors and whether or not we're able to manage them. And I had a friend in the Midwest who was out hiking on a trail. It was raining. There was a set of steps going down to this view, and they took a tumble down them, and then were stuck in the rain. And for them, when it first happened, they thought, oh God, this is bad. I'm in a lot of trouble. And they called me after the fact and wanted to sort of walk through it. And when you sort of break it down into, well, do I have enough with me to keep me dry? If so, the rain doesn't really matter. Do I have enough food with me? Is it, can I sustain myself overnight if I needed to? Absolute worst case scenario. And if the answer is yes, then you just bought yourself a ton of time. So it's no longer particularly emergent. Mm-hmm. And then the other 2 big ones are, can I get out and how do I get help? And they were on a very highly trafficked trail on a weekend. So if they did nothing to self-advocate, someone's going to stumble across them. And with some rest and some food, they were able to stand up and slowly walk. And so all of a sudden, when you can start to look at each of those components of concern and go, well, I can manage each of them. So now maybe instead of having this catastrophic event, I just have the time that I took a hard fall in the woods and got myself out. And this is kind of a cool story.
That's great. Mm-hmm. It's reminiscent of the Ty Gagne book there about Kate Matrasova, decision points and just, making the right decisions along the way. Excellent. I love dead air. And like every radio host I've ever heard, like always like talks about dead air. Like you can't have dead air. We're just all thinking, just for the audience's sake, we're all just in deep thought right now. All right. How about we'll just zip through a couple of these. So how about heat and cold injuries?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was actually doing some research recently on National Park Service stats on rescues, and the highest risk activity by numbers in the national parks is weekend hikers. Mm-hmm. Second highest risk is non-motorized watercraft. The number one leading cause of people requiring rescue was poor planning and poor decision making. So inadequate supplies going in and poor management of decisions once they're there. Mm-hmm. And a huge part of the decision making was, or of the planning, was bringing enough supplies in and wearing enough clothes once you're there.
Yeah.
I think there's a really interesting, I don't know why this is, but I think with cold injuries, there's a really interesting factor that people don't think about, but we set ourselves up to fail in the cold way more than we do in the heat. If you leave your house with a hoodie on and realize that it's 80 and humid, no one goes, well, these are the cards I've been dealt. I guess I'm just going to die today. You take the hoodie off and maybe you go back in and change because it's going to be disgusting. But people commonly will go outside and go, oh, God, it's colder than I thought. And be like, well, you want to run in and grab a jacket? They go, no, I'm good. And I think that's one of the we always underestimate the impact of the cold. And then when people start hiking, no one wants to start hiking uncomfortable. We always want to be comfy. So we start by hiking warm. We get 50 feet in. Now our base layers are wet with sweat, and then we peel off our shells. Mm-hmm. And so we start dumping heat aggressively. And I think a lot of times folks don't equate, like, not to sound overly techie, but calorie intake with heat sustenance. And mm-hmm. I hate the term heat exhaustion because it's not heat exhaustion. It's just exhaustion. People burn through what they need to sustain. Mm-hmm. And you do it just as fast in the cold, just for different reasons. We're not sweating it out, but our furnace is going into overdrive trying to stay warm.
Yeah, that's excellent. Do you have any memorable rescues or events in your own personal life dealing with heat? I won't say exhaustion.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of two as far as the cold, actually. One recently, and I think this is the more problematic setting, was the one we did on Crawford Path, where it wasn't a particularly cold day, but it was drizzly and gray and a little humid. And a lot of folks on that were wearing fairly minimal layers.
Right.
But then I noticed by the time a number of us got down, everyone was pretty cold, myself included.
Right.
And I think that's the really tricky part with cold environments, is that it's a very fickle mistress. It doesn't take a lot for, it doesn't need to be an Arctic chill for people to have problems with the cold. And springtime is number one high risk season for it because, one, everyone's celebrating the fact that it's not cold anymore. Mm-hmm. And so we prematurely delayer and then we get rained on.
And you're out there for several hours. I mean, just soaked. I mean, your clothes only do so much to keep you dry.
For heat, this is still, and I'm sure when my better half listens to this podcast, she's going to start rolling her eyes because she's heard me reference this in classes too many times. But I think one of the most miserable, let me rephrase that, the most miserable carryout I ever did was up on Glen Boulder Trail. in the middle of summer, and it was so humid that it wasn't raining as much as just the sky was sweating. And when we were coming back down Glen Boulder Trail, it was just a miserable slog, and people kept sort of toppling, trying to stay on the litter. And a huge part of it, I think, was just that we dumped so much sweat and fuel going up, that people were really struggling on the way out.
Yeah. Glen Boulder is awesome.
So, BB, question for you. Glen Boulder is just, that's a steep haul anyway, getting up there. But question for you. So,
I was just going to say, I've been thinking about this a lot, because I feel bad when I have students that say, "What's your favorite hike?" And I go, "I don't know. Let's work backwards. I hate Glen Boulder Trail. It's a miserable slog." And I had someone point out once, and I thought this was interesting, that I grew up in sort of the Appalachian region hiking in Harper's Ferry area.
Yeah.
And someone said, well, if you go to an area that was developed by Puritans, where just backbreaking hard labor was the fast track to God, you get trails like Glen Boulder. You go to the mid-Atlantic Appalachia, where people had moonshine stills and couldn't walk a straight line, you get the most amazing switchback trails ever.
That's awesome.
It's like, I think someone's on to something.
Yeah, that makes an odd, that makes sense in an odd way, for sure. No, question I have for you about solo is, if I'm looking to sort of get my feet wet in learning about wilderness first responder or wilderness first aid, what is like the 101 course with solo that I would take to sort of be starting my journey and getting competent in helping save somebody in the wilderness?
I would say, as sort of especially for folks that are just getting their feet wet, I can't harp on it enough, but if you find yourself buying your first set of nice boots and a good pack, because you really want to make sure you can spend some time out there, taking the wilderness first aid course, it's a 2-day class. The majority of them are taught over a weekend. And it really gives you a foundation on how to avoid some of the most common problems and how to play a valuable role in stabilizing some of the more extreme ones. And I think it really should be on sort of your shopping checklist, as it were. Okay, I got my stove, my bottle, my pack, my boots, and some basic training to stay safe. Mm-hmm. But that would be your icebreaker course.
And it's over a weekend. I've seen people, I know a lot of people that have taken various courses. Do you actually host people at the location? Like, you stay overnight at Solo, or do you have to get your own lodging?
No, Solo, when we have courses on site, Solo has a dormitory on the facility. And I think, honestly, that's one of the most, for lack of a better word, romantic ways to do it. You've got a dorm tucked back on a hillside, a dead-end dirt road in the middle of the Whites. The building was built by hand by the owners. It sits on 300 acres of a wonderful hill that we do all of our training on. And it really does feel like more of an experience than just a transactional, like your classic CPR class or something.
Got it. So if you have a loved one that you think would be interested in this, it sounds like it would be a great, like, Father's Day or Mother's Day or birthday present for someone to get them a weekend course. And if my wife's listening to this, that's a solid hint for you.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I can say.
Plus, you get to get rid of me.
For sure, my experience at Solo as a student is why I've been in New Hampshire for the majority of the past 10 years.
great. Now, how about Solo and SAR? How long have you guys been working with Fish and Game, and how did that relationship develop?
So Solo has the school itself, and then there's also, they're licensed within the state EMS system as what's called a non-transport facility or non-transport service. And that has gone back as long as I've been with Solo, and for years preceding that to varying degrees. One of the nice things about it, and it would be hard for us to pull off our involvement without the support of the search and rescue teams in the area, is that it gives our students an opportunity to not only see the patient care and assessment that we teach them on a live patient. It gives them a great clinical opportunity, but they also get to see what is actually involved in doing a carry out and a rescue. Mm-hmm. The upside is that oftentimes, for any team, someone gets injured, they call 911. 911 realizes it's the trail. That bumps it over to Fish and Game. Fish and Game puts out a call to search and rescue. Now they have to hit their call list and see who's available and then get them from wherever they are to the trailhead. And with Solo, since we have essentially everyone's fixed in one location taking their class.
It's called a captive audience.
Oftentimes. Yeah, exactly. It's a captive audience that may, not in exact words, but be under the impression that they're required to do this, which is fantastic. But instead we get, anywhere from 15 to 20 people in one spot that we can take all at once. And so I would definitely stray away from saying that Solo bringing a class replaces the need for other teams. But one thing we've been incredibly lucky with is that teams have been so supportive in taking our students under their wing during carryouts and coaching them along as sort of green thumbs to the field.
So how about your curriculum, knowing that you may be called out with a bunch of green, maybe not green hikers in this realm of wilderness medicine? Have you changed your curriculum to prepare them for the fact that they may have to, put a nylon strap over their shoulder and carry 200 pounds, or what's happened there?
I think honestly the trickiest part is that students get very very comfortable, with like, well, I'll just grab stuff from the classroom, or, well, I don't need to bring my pack out on this scenario. And so we try to make sure that we're highlighting the need to treat everything in real time. I think one of the best examples is when we go over how to do a litter carry. I'll watch a lot of students drop their packs with the thought that, well, we're only 100 feet from the classroom. I'll leave my pack here, do the litter carry, and come back and get it. Yeah. And it's always funny to point out to them, like, you planning on leaving the pack at the top of the mountain so that you can go back up and get it afterwards? Because that's what you're doing right now. And you just see those wheels turn a little bit. Oh, you want us to wear these? Like, well, I'm not carrying 7 of them. So, yes.
That's awesome.
And it is funny when we do a carry out and then afterwards, like, man, that was a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah. It's literally the opposite of everything you could possibly want to do all at once.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
There's never a time when I've wanted to lift something only with one hand. There's never a time that I've wanted to go downhill with more weight. And there's never a time that I thought, what would make hiking better is to do it with 30 people that I don't know all at once, and one person that's particularly miserable. It's the best way to make all of those things less ideal. And then we're just going to do it for a really long, drawn out period of time.
That's so funny. Oh man, gotta love it. So No, obviously you guys are covered under the New Hampshire, well, or the state indemnity and workers' compensation, right, for these students? Is that how it would work, or is this?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it all falls under Fish and Games.
Except for if you're practicing medicine. Now, that's another question. You and I have talked about this on the trail a little bit, but just the legal distinctions between being just a Good Samaritan on the trail versus somebody that has a license. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's one thing it's an interesting world, because it's wilderness medicine in general has been, and I don't mean for this to sound boastful or irreverent, but wilderness medicine has always been something that has taken what is on the books and gone, well, that doesn't apply. How do we make it work? Mm-hmm. And so to look at a wilderness setting and go, okay, well, how do scope of practice modules and medical licensure apply in a realm that they weren't designed for without breaking rules? It's become a tricky one, because, it's something that I've started to look into recently, as we've talked about. But you're roping in essentially recognition by the state board of EMS, insurance policies that are managed by the state, whether it's Fish and Game or whoever is calling you out, and then what protocols they've intended to cover or are prepared to cover.
Yeah.
And then also there's a certain level of duty to act. If you're going in as part of a rescue, it goes sort of both ways, as far as someone needing to go, well, here's what I'd like to be able to do. And I'm licensed to do it in the state, although not in this setting. And mainly if I'm only working for this ambulance service or this fire department. But then the other side of it that I haven't been able to get a particularly clear answer on is, what liability does a provider have who's trained to provide care, who's licensed to provide it, is on scene to render aid, and doesn't provide it because they're concerned with whether they might be covered?
So I wonder if does Good Samaritan shut off at your license, or does it reside concurrently with your license?
That's one thing that actually changes state to state, as far as how, who's considered a Good Samaritan. My understanding is that in New Hampshire, if you're responding as part of an organized team, you're generally not considered a Good Samaritan. Whereas in the state of Maine, you could respond on an ambulance service in uniform, and if you're not getting paid for it, may fall under Good Samaritan protection because you're now a volunteer. So every state's identification and sort of recognition of Good Samaritan coverage differs as well.
Probably the one question that I'm curious about, BB, is there's probably anywhere from 6 to 10 major sort of medical incidents that that will result in fatalities annually in the New Hampshire region. And essentially, you're talking about heart attacks, strokes when you're out in the wilderness, and typically, those happen where nobody's on scene to sort of assist with any sort of prevention of that, and the hikers will, for whatever reason, will experience these major medical injuries, and it'll result in a fatality. But is there any thoughts from your perspective, the techniques that you teach in your sort of beginner classes around wilderness first aid? Do you feel like those would help in those major medical cases, or is it just, from your perspective, is it just a situation where those things happen and there's really not a lot that you can do to help people? And
so honestly, I think you actually hit the nail on the head with both of those. We do teach things to try to help, but it's not so much that I think there are techniques that can be taught to avoid that, but teaching people to understand and embrace for lack of a better word, the reality of the limitations when they're in those environments. And, Mike, you and I had sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier, I think offline. I'm not a big fan of, not that anyone's suggesting we should, but I'm not a big fan of armchair quarterbacking rescues. I think debriefing afterwards and learning from them is invaluable. But I think it's really tricky when you have a medical emergency in a backcountry environment. It's sort of like it's like taking a time warp back in time. Everything that we've learned about human survival from a medical standpoint is tailored towards people being in a big city with a well-developed EMS system and major hospitals. And that's what society is sort of hubbed around. And, even here, in the Whites, we have someone who gets injured. If it's severe enough, let's fly them to a major city where we have a major hospital. When we have people get injured in the woods, we've removed all of those advancements. You're hours away from people being able to get to you. Once people get to you, they're not going to have access to all the tools and equipment you would on an ambulance. You're now probably hours away from getting off of the side of a mountain. And it just compounds all of these factors that are contending with your survival, essentially. I think one of the unfortunate components that gets overlooked in that is the toll that plays on the rescuer, who's already taken on a fairly steep challenge just to get to someone, and then afterwards have someone go, well, what should we have done differently? Because they didn't make it. And I don't know that there is always a good answer. It's when you put yourself into more austere and remote environments, I think there needs to be a certain amount of personal accountability that, depending on how bad this gets, it may be too bad to fix. I've taken myself off the map of response, essentially, and put myself into a very, very remote environment where I don't have access to what we grow up thinking we would have access to when we have chest pain or difficulty breathing or some other emergency waiting to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I always say, like, it doesn't happen a lot, but I do. I recently did a hike into the Pemi wilderness where, there's no cell connection. You're off trail, and I always say, like, okay, we're working without a net here. And, I feel like, there's plenty of times when we're out there hiking where we're working without a net, and, we've got to be able to accept that risk. And, it's, I guess it comes with the territory, but no, that makes sense. It's just, I do feel like a lot of these fatalities, it's like getting hit by lightning.
Yeah.
It happens. It's unfortunate, but it's really there's nothing that you can do to control it.
No, I'd agree. I heard a statistic a few times that, and it kind of drives me nuts, but people will say there's some evidence that CPR is more effective in a remote backcountry setting. And it's much more correlation than causation, that when we do CPR in the backcountry, most commonly it's because someone had a drowning event or possibly was struck by lightning, both of which have a significantly higher rate of survivability than a heart attack. So because of that, sure, in those conditions, you have a better chance of surviving anyway. But I think it sets people up with this goofy misunderstanding that, if we do CPR in the woods, it should help. Mm-hmm. And there's zero evidence to back that up. If you have someone who has a compromised heart and they have a heart attack on the side of a mountain, it's not to say that search and rescue and fish and game won't do everything they can to buy them every chance they deserve. There's just only so much you can do with those limitations.
Now, that leads into a question I had surrounding, you'd mentioned the toll it takes on rescuers, not only physically, but my question is mentally. When we talked about critical incident stress debriefings and things like that, how do rescuers and people in these fields manage the stress and the impact of what they've seen over the years?
Historically, not well.
Yeah.
It's not a field that we pay much attention to, and especially in the world of urban EMS, burnout's a huge factor, as is substance abuse. I think a couple of things that contribute to that, especially in the urban side of things, but I think it's a good self-check in any rescue work, is having a clear idea of what you define as a success. Success doesn't mean that you save every person, but I think if you can go to bed that night knowing that you did everything possible to save that person, so that at least, family and loved ones can go, I know that they got every chance they possibly could. I think that's a successful operation.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think it's tricky because people have this expectation that someone walking back out of the woods, that's a successful one, and that's unrealistic. And then it puts you in a situation of you second guessing yourself and going, what should I have done differently? What else could we have done? Instead of going, I know we did everything we could. Maybe there was something else they needed, but it wasn't something we could give.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, PEMI offers, chaplain services and, if support, just if people are struggling with some of the things that they've seen. And I'm sure most of the other teams do as well. That's a really helpful service. Just to walk through and talk about certain.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you guys do that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Even I think there's a toll even for these lower leg injuries over the years. I mean, it's a traumatic event, and it's a high adrenaline episode that you get called out on. And over the years, I'm sure it really does take a toll on people, even though it's maybe considered something minor, orthopedically or something like that.
I had two questions, maybe not specifically related to what we've been talking about, but you piqued my curiosity in the beginning. Did you say that you were training anti-poaching personnel in Africa previously?
I worked 2 different times. Lived in Malawi in southern Africa, training anti-poaching. One trip traveled around to a number of different reserves and wildlife sanctuaries, training their anti-poaching rangers.
What types of animals were of concern?
The main ones were, without getting too off topic, the main one of attraction in Malawi was the elephant.
Okay.
One of the tricky things with the world of poaching is that there's trophy hunting and then subsistence hunting. And so there were a lot of animals that were getting targeted by poachers, but not the way we think of with groups going out for ivory, but they may just be locals that are hunting on protected land because they have no other access to food options.
Got it.
But the elephants were sort of the iconic of the big 5 that were on those the reserves that I was training at.
Very interesting. And do you, based on your experience, do you have high hopes that we'll be able to save these species, or is it just a difficult fight?
I think it's a hugely difficult fight, and I think not to get on some philosophical soapbox, but I think with any battle like that, whether it's saving the elephants or a drug epidemic or whatever it is, I think the hardest part is that we look for a quick fix, and in repairing it, and oftentimes it was seeking a quick fix that causes the problem. And there's a much more complex underbelly to the issue, whether it's, okay, well, we need to protect these elephants, so let's make the land surrounding them protected land so people can't go on them and hunt. Well, but what do we do with the villagers that live there? Oh, we'll push them off the land. Okay, so what do they do for food? Well, they can figure that out. Okay, so now the new pressure is going to be that they come on and hunt. And yesterday, what they were hunting was, bush bucks that were legal for them to hunt, but now we just said they can't. And it's yes, all the atrocities and lessons we could have learned from the American West seem to vanish like smoke in the wind.
Yeah. So the unintended consequences of thinking you're doing a good thing. So my next question was going to be Haiti, which is probably an even more complicated scenario, but you were there supporting veterinarian services. Can you talk a little bit about like what is it like for a vet in Haiti? What are they typically doing? Are they helping like street dogs and cats, or are they doing like large domestic farm animals?
No. So interestingly, most of the vets in Haiti worked for the Haitian government, for the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Health. And the majority of them were trained in Cuba, which has a fantastic reputation for both having a very good vet school, but interestingly also a very good human school of dentistry. Mm-hmm. But they, it was mostly on agriculture.
Okay.
Anything that could generate gross domestic product revenue. So a lot of the work I did was actually working on how to develop street dog sterilization programs. Then we did disaster preparedness and response for livestock, and then an equine welfare program. One of the big tricks was going to Haiti, and for me, I think one of the things that I found most challenging was trying to avoid these sort of hi, country that I've never been to. Let me show you how much I can help you.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was walking into. I didn't speak the language. I knew nothing about it. And so I would meet with these government officials that went, so what's your plan? I was like, I have no idea. What do you guys need? And with working with dogs in the United States, a lot of people are like, oh, are you bringing dogs back to the U.S.? I'd say, no, that's not going to help. There are plenty of homeless dogs in shelters now, but more than 60% of the human cases of rabies getting contracted on the Western Hemisphere was in Haiti.
Really?
And so if we could do these street dog sterilization programs and work on getting the dogs vaccinated at the same time, we might actually be able to help the people of Haiti. If we could use the veterinarians as sort of spokespeople in their areas to do disaster planning and mitigation when hurricanes came in, maybe we could help people either do an early harvest or get out of the way of a storm so that their farm didn't get completely obliterated, they didn't lose everything, or they themselves would not get lost to a hurricane. And then since in rural Haiti, a lot of people depended on having donkeys, or sometimes if they were a little lucky, or horses to bring their goods to market, if we could show them how to take better care of their animals, the animals would last longer and could provide more service to the families.
Wow. So you've traveled quite a bit, but you've mostly been settled in the Northeast for the last 10 years or so now?
Yeah, since about 2011. I've hopped around a few times, but New Hampshire has pulled me back.
Well, we're happy to have you here, and definitely it's interesting talking to you, man. You probably have a million stories for sure, but I'm very interested. I'm hoping I can take a class with you as the instructor in the future. So we'll see.
I'd love it. But your wife does listen to the show, right? So
yes, yeah, I'm working on it,
Kicking and screaming.
I'm trying to figure out like the next milestone. So yeah, exactly.
Oh boy!
But great. No, this is all very interesting. And last question I have is, you've been on rescues with Stomp. Is he pulling his weight, or is he still sitting back with holding the clipboard, ordering you guys around?
Ordering pizza?
No, I honestly, and I'm not saying this, I'm hoping his camera freezes again in a second, but a couple of things that has always stuck out to me with Stomp on rescues. One is, I think on the last one, was having some aches and pains, always has a smile, and is always looking out for not only his team, but the patient and anyone related to the patient, which is always, it catches me, because there's my goal, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, is generally to if I can make sure a solid 75% of my students still make it back out of the woods, it's a win. But making sure that the patient themselves is doing decent and bringing some levity to it. If I can get someone laughing, it's probably the best thing I can do for them.
Yeah.
But I remember on one of the last rescues I saw Stomp, he was checking on how their family was doing, making sure they had heard what was happening and were up to date with the plan for the whole rescue. And I honestly think there's precious few people that keep as much of a sort of bird's eye view on the whole situation, not just monitoring the one person, but, you know, their inner circle and then the circle around them. And so it's always one of those faces it's nice to see, because you go, okay, whew, even if I lose track of what's happening for a minute, we've got a good overview.
Yeah, they're a little more complicated than you would think, these scenarios, you know. But I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think when we originally started talking about doing this podcast, BB, we were sort of angling towards like, all right, we'll do more of a general hiking podcast, and you know, we just kept sort of talking it through, and I'm very interested in the search and rescue piece of it as well. So we ultimately decided like let's lead with the search and rescue, and then we'll have the hiking as a follow up. And I think it's Stomp's passion, and I think that it's made the show a lot more successful because that's really what energizes both of us versus just if we did like a general hiking podcast and didn't cover this stuff, I think it would be less, you get less passion from both of us. So it validates what I always figured Stomp would be like in the field.
Oh, you guys are making me blush.
Yeah. So you're a good man, Stomp, even though I give you shit all the time.
Well, I think, you know, honestly, I think it's a cool idea having a search and rescue podcast, because one of the things that I always thought of with search and rescue is like this elite specialty team. And I think in many ways that's what it is. But what's so neat to me about it is that what makes a team specialty or specialized is how diverse the specialties within the team are. You know, my thing is medical response. That's what I do. You know, I actually, without getting into too many details, met my better half doing a training for Stomp's team. And I remember trying to get up the nerve to talk to her after the training was done, and having someone hop in front of me to talk to me about how they were a map maker. And it was this very trying moment of going, I don't think I've ever met a map maker. I didn't know we still did that. I actually kind of want to hear this now, but I'm watching this person pack their bags that I've been wanting to go talk to for a day and a half. And then you have some people that
it's like, do I hit on this person, or do I talk to the
exactly.
cartographer?
Like, Amerigo Vespucci, if you can hang on for 1 second, I got to ask this gal a question. But then you have some people that could pick any trail in the whites and go, well, you know, this time of year, this part's going to be washed out. And then you have other people that just want to hike and carry a litter. And I think that's what's, you know, when I have students go, what do you need to do to be on search and rescue? And I was like, well, if you want the technical skills, just get a cinder block, tie a rope around it, and go for a really long walk up and down a hill.
Yeah, seriously.
It's so funny you say that, because when Stomp first started like getting into it, he would like text me. He'd be like, I'm going to hike and I got 100-pound weight in my bag. And I'd be like, why are you doing that? And he legitimately, like when he was just starting off, he would go and do those hikes with a 100-pound backpack just to be prepared. So, you know, you laugh, but like, it's true. Like that's what he was doing. And I was like, he's crazy. I don't know what's going on with him, but lo and behold, it's working.
I think I ticked off one of my team members on a carry out one time. I showed up to help out, and I honestly, my pack was not what it should have been for the event. And as we're walking out, they said, "You don't have a headlamp on." And I said, "No, well, I got 37 people behind me with 200 lumens strapped to their foreheads. Like I can Google Earth is picking us up at this point." And they said, "Well, I always have at least 3 in my pack. And I said, and therein lies the reason that I didn't need to bring a single one.
Oh man, that's great.
Which is horrible advice coming from a team coordinator, but I feel like I've gone through those ebbs and flows of like, I've got to have at least half an REI in my pack at all times. And now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I think I have a sandwich in one of my pockets. My shoes are tied. It's good enough. Let's go.
Yeah. It's so great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much.
And there you have it, Chris Beebe, one of the listeners' fan favorites. Chris is such a great guy. We're always glad to have him on board for the laughs and the insight into search and rescue and how to be safe out there in the hills. All right, now we're moving on to humorist Ken Bosse. This is his first appearance when he released his first book, and now I think he's on to his third book now, and a lot of the proceeds of his books or from his books support search and rescue teams. So he's doing the Lord's work out there, so to speak. So enjoy this one. He's such a blast. He's so much fun, especially live. So I'm really looking forward to his set at the Full Condition show. And here we go.
Awesome. So, Ken, why don't you take it away and give a little bit of background? So, don't get too much into the book or the hiking piece of it yet, because we'll get into that. But just a little bit of background about yourself personally, what you do for work, and we'll get into more detail about the books and hiking in a minute.
Sure. Yeah. So personally, I was born at a very young age, and people ask me what sign I was born under, and I say maternity. It was quite an adventure. Doctor slapped me and then looked at me and slapped my mother. So it's kind of how things unfolded. But a little background. I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor now for about 31 years at the church I'm in now. I get a fortune of pastoring the greatest congregation in all the state of New Hampshire, in Raymond, New Hampshire. And I'm also a PCC level licensed life coach with the International Coaching Federation. So I coach municipalities and businesses and teams and individuals and couples. And I'm also the chaplain for the Raymond Police Department. And I just gravitated into hiking at one point in my life.
Cool. Well, we'll get into that. And then Ian, so you're tagging along here with Ken. So can you give a little bit of background as well about yourself?
Yeah. So essentially, I was in Ken's church as a kid, and then I ended up going in Florida for a little while, did some college, and then when I moved back, I got into powerlifting, and I was lifting really heavy, and I was kind of transforming out of that. I wanted to get some more cardio, and he started posting some of the stories for his book on Facebook before his book was a thing, and I got into some of those, and I asked him if I could tag along on a hike, and been on a ton since then with him. It's kind of lit that fire inside of me.
Yeah, that's a weird transition to go from like power. So I have a good friend. I have a couple of friends that are like pretty competitive bodybuilders, and the whole hiking thing for them. They do a lot of fair amount of cardio, but it's a lot of quad rubbing, I think, as they're going uphill. Yeah.
Essentially, with powerlifting, you lift one thing once and then you're winded. So I want something a little more functional than that.
Yeah, exactly. So Ken, why don't you start? So you already started at the beginning about being born and all that fun stuff. But why don't you talk a little bit about and I won't give too much away, but you got into hiking later in life. Which you touched on it when you were a little younger, but you got back into it. So can you talk a little bit about your hiking background, and then how you got back into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I think it started with a really lazy pediatrician that made me hike out of my mother's womb. He just left me to do that on my own, and and I think that's kind of like the epitome of hiking, right? You're in a nice, warm, comfortable, safe place close to somebody you love, and you crawl out of that thing into a wet, damp, where you're crying and bleeding and all that, and that's hiking right there. So, but I did a couple of hikes as a teenager with some friends that I had back then, and we did like Lafayette, the Loop, and we did Washington and a couple of big hikes like that. and then just kind of, didn't do much after that, probably until, that was probably like at 19 years old. And then I didn't really hike again after that until I was like in my 30s. I did a couple of hikes with my sister and brother-in-law, and my kids were, 8 and 11. So we brought them on a couple of hikes. We did Cannon, and I think we did Lafayette again. Just a couple of little exposures like that. Nothing much. And then I really put on a lot of weight. Just being a pastor is like not a lot of physical activity going on there. And so I just started putting on a lot of weight. A lot of weight. It was, my blood type was ragu. It was, I put a pair of BBDs on and the tag on the back spelled Boulevard. It was horrible. But,
hey, these jokes are pretty good compared to my tick joke.
Yeah, he's good. Ken can come in with some tick jokes like that.
So then I kind of got incapacitated to hike, but then at one point in time, I live right by Pawtuckaway State Park in southern New Hampshire. It's right in next to Raymond, and so I just started getting into hiking in the park a lot. And there's only 3 mountains there, 800, 900, and 1,000 feet, so nothing super big, but it was big enough for me. And that's that's kind of like how I started into hiking, was just in Pawtuckaway Park. Every chance I got, I'm only like 5 minutes away from the park, so every chance I got, I was out hiking in the park.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
Yeah, it's nice.
We should camp there quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
There is a camp place there.
Oh, yeah, big camp.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the boulder fields, and a lot of rock climbers go in there because there's a lot of rock out there.
Yeah.
A lot of rock.
Yeah, so at some point, Ken, you transitioned from, so you basically were looking to lose weight, and so you were locally doing hikes. At what point what made you click to say, like, oh, I can head north and do the big mountains?
So a couple of things happened. Is one, I hurt myself. I developed plantar fasciitis, and for a year and a half, I couldn't even walk. I just limped everywhere, and if I walked, 100 feet, that was it. I was just in excruciating pain. And in our church, we pray for people, and I thought, gee, I should go get prayer. After suffering for a year and a half, light dawned on Marblehead, and I thought, I'm going to. So within 5 weeks of people praying for me, the pain completely went away. And I'm like, oh, this is great. So I went back to Pawtuckaway, and I was crushing it, and I was feeling pretty good. And I thought, gee, I wonder if I could do a 4,000 footer again. Because it was years, you're talking years and years since I've done one. And I had joined Rotary International in Raymond, and that's where I originally met Dave Salois. Dave Salois at that time was the chief of the Raymond Police Department. And I used to be the chaplain years ago, and that kind of like fell apart. He was now a new chief, and so he invited me to become the chaplain of the Raymond Police Department again. And, and I was telling people how I was hiking constantly in Pawtuckaway, and he started telling me that he was hiking up here in the Whites. And, he mentioned the 4,000 footers and stuff like that. So that kind of like got my curiosity going a little bit. And I thought, gee, I wonder if I could go back and do, a 4,000. I'm 59 years old at that time. I was like 59 years old and probably 70 pounds overweight. And I'm like, I wonder if I could do a 4,000 footer, because I was feeling pretty good in Pawtuckaway, So that's how it started.
That's a big difference, though.
Oh.
Yeah, a little bit of a difference in elevation, right?
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding.
And Ken, you did most of your. Is it a crew? Is it 3 of you or 4 of you total? That's it. Your core group of friends.
Yeah. So the way that happened is. When I wanted to do another 4,000 footer, I did Mount Wombat because I heard that was the easiest one. Mm-hmm. Some liars told me that. And so I didn't want to do it alone. So there's this guy I know in my church. He's a little older than me. He was like 10 years older than me, maybe 11, not as good looking. And so I contacted him. And he was in really good shape. He was a jogger. All his life he'd been a jogger, and he was retired. And my schedule, being a pastor, is very flexible. I can take any day off I want and just make up for it later. And so I asked him if he would hike, on this 4,000 footer, and he did. And he immediately recommended that we, after that first initial hike, that we start doing smaller mountains for something that he called conditioning, which was a word I'd never heard before. Conditioning.
It's not what you put in your hair.
No, it is not. So, we backed off and we started doing the Belknap range and the Ossipee range and, stuff like that. And then we went back and we did Jackson and Hale and, some of these other first. And then Dave Solois heard that Keith and I were hiking a lot, now doing the 48. And so he asked if he could go on a hike with us. And now there was 3. And then a few hikes later after that, Ian reached out and said, hey, I saw some of your Facebook posts. I was wondering if I could go with you. And then he started offering money. So I said, yeah, absolutely. So he started hiking. And that's where the 4 of us kind of welded together. And there's been a couple of guys that have kind of like come in and gone out. But, the 4 of us have been basically the consistency of all the hiking that we've done.
Got it. So, Ian, you're a lot younger than the rest of this crew, right? So can you talk a little bit of because I'm just trying to think when I was in so you were only like your late 20s when this started. Like when I was in my late 20s, I can't remember if I had work relationships with older folks, but that was about it. Like, can you talk a little bit about that dynamic? I'm curious. What are you doing hanging out with all these old people?
Ever since I was younger, I always got along easier with older people. I never enjoyed like immature stuff my age, really. So I've always gone along with older people. And one of the nice things that I knew when I started out with Ken was that he wasn't going too fast, and I wasn't going too fast either. So I knew that was going to be a good little relationship there too.
Perfect. And did that work across the 4 of you, Ken? Was it any problem with like speed or like the pace of hiking, or did you guys pretty much kind of work that out?
Yeah, so like you can take a still picture of me with a moving camera when I'm hiking, and but Dave, Keith was great. He hiked all the 48 with me, and kudos to Keith. He's now looking at doing the over 70. But Dave came on, and Dave is an athlete. Dave ran marathons, and Dave, he does 75-mile bike runs just to go get, a hamburger or something. He's that kind of guy. So that was a little concerning, because he's fast. Yeah. He's in really good shape. And I was in shape, rounds of shape. But that was a little concerning because he could definitely, if he wanted, he could put the pedal to the metal and leave us all behind. But he's a very gracious guy too, so he was patient to a degree. I didn't like it when he got in the lead because I knew it was like, oh my God, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Ken, when did you, so you dipped your toe in the water, you're doing a couple of these 4,000 footers. At what point were you sort of solidified to say, yeah, I can knock this list off? And then at what point did you say, I have a dumb idea, why don't I write a book about this?
So, yeah, some of the early ones, when you do Hale and you do Tecumseh and you do, you look at the shortest ones and the easiest ones and they were killing me. I don't think these guys really understand how much I suffered. It was anguish. For me, it was just like a personal, can I even survive? And then after a while, it's like, hey, I think I can do this. Now you're ramping up to doing like the Tri-Pyramids and, Cannon and the Loop and some of the presidentials. And then you think, yeah, I think I can do this, and you save those, you save the bonds for for last.
No kidding,
Owl's
right?
Head and, Owl's Head, there's a treat for you. What is that, like 16 miles and there's not even a view? It's crazy.
That's a death march for sure.
Is. But, So yeah, that's how it started. And so what was happening is, I was coming home and licking my wounds and like literally it would take me, it was funny because I would come home, have a hard time getting out of my car, limp around for a little while, then I'd feel pretty good. And then like the next 3 days after that, I could barely walk. It was like a delayed reaction. I think my body was in such shock. It was like, we're going to sneak up on you. And so that's when I just started writing these funny Facebook posts. I'd post a couple of pictures of the view and of the trails and of the hike. And then I would write this, this long chapter on Facebook, really funny, just like, this is what happened. I fell in the water and I swallowed 6 black flies and, all the typical stuff about hiking. And people started following that. And then people started like relating to that. And then hikers started, catching up onto some of these pages. And then people were like, you got to put these in a book.
Yeah.
As a furthest thing from my mind, I'm not like a writer. English, I'm like next to science, history, math, and geology. History was my worst subject in school. I was an honor student. It was yes, Your Honor, and no, Your Honor, and, that kind of thing. But so I just said, all right. I really didn't think it would sell. And so I'm like, I'm not going to make money of this. And I thought, be a good hook to help sell these is to say I'm going to donate it all to search and rescue. And it's going to sell these books. And, it actually did. People were like, that's a really cool idea. If I don't like the book, at least I know I did a worthy thing. So
if nobody buys it.
In case nobody buys it, yeah. The only one that's going to suffer from that is search and rescue. So, but so that's how it started. It was like one post after another post. I had probably had 15 to 20 posts on Facebook. And people were like, you got to start saving these. You got to put these in a book. And I'm like, all right, I'm not an author and, I'm not a writer, but I just said, okay, I'm just going to give it the old fashioned college try and put it together. And a lot of help with different people that helped me edit it. My wife, number one editor, and a couple other people that I know. And it came together, and I didn't know how it was. And, I think one of the biggest negative reviews I got was that it's repetitive. But I kind of, at the beginning of the book, I said, listen, this is 48 stories of 48 hikes. It's not a lot of ways you can tell that story different. And so I said, don't read the whole thing in one sitting. Read a couple at a time and break it up, and then it won't be so repetitive, Yeah,
that's true.
But other than that, it's taken off great. And the money has poured in. We made a big donation to PEMI.
Yeah.
I tried to make a donation to Andrew Scoggin, and I think they canceled their meeting, or they had to do it by Zoom or something, so I wasn't able to actually participate. It was like an annual meeting.
Yeah.
So I need to reconnect with them because I have some money for them. And then everything after that is just going to go to the Outdoor Research Council.
Outdoor Council, yeah. New Hampshire Outdoor Council.
Yeah, they handle all that stuff for you guys, right?
Yeah. The teams can apply for grants and whatever else, so.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Ian, with Ken, so Ken was struggling on his hikes. How were you holding up?
So I was
because I just envisioned everyone dying and nobody admitting that they were hurting. They all just wanted to sort of be tough in front of each other. So
that's kind of what it was. When Ken was doing his fast pace, I was comfortable.
Okay,
which worked out pretty good. And then, like he said, as long as Dave didn't make his way to the lead, we were doing all right.
Awesome. And then Ken, at what point did you? I guess what was the? If you don't mind sharing, so what was the max weight, and then where did you end up through this hiking journey?
So max weight was probably 280.
Okay.
And I'm 6'3". I was 6'4". I think that weight pulled me down a little bit. I'm 6'3" now, and gravity, man. So I kind of carried it somewhat well, but you can't hide that much weight. So so in the hiking, I was just killing myself lugging all of this stuff around, as well as my pack and my hydration and all this stuff. And then I thought, after a while, I was like, why am I doing this, So Ian's family actually does this competitive weight loss competition. And, everybody pools money together, and whoever loses the most weight wins. And I thought, I'm shallow enough to lose weight for money. And so entered that competition and won. I just dropped dropped 40 pounds, and I started hiking so much better. I actually started finding out what hiking was supposed to be like.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd go do a hike, come back, and I'm like, gee, I can get out of my car.
Yeah.
And I can walk.
Pretty neat.
No wonder people like this.
Yeah. A little bit of weight can make a huge difference in your speed and endurance, and amazing.
Yeah.
And did you, I guess, as far as getting onto this journey, did you sort of dial in your gear a little bit differently from the beginning until where you are now? Can you talk a little bit about how your gear choice evolved?
That's it, Ian?
Yeah, Ian, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so I started out and I had Walmart pack, giant heavy pack. I started out with the big, heavy Walmart trekking poles because I didn't know how serious I was going to take it. And then I started counting ounces. And then when I did the Sunapee Greenway Trail, that's really when it set into me to start kind of dialing my weight back and pay a little more attention to it.
You know what I hate about Walmart, though? Is if they don't have what you want, that means you got to go home and shave, comb your hair, get out of your pajamas, and go to Target.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So, Stomp, one thing that I don't know if you've read the first book or not, but Ken has like an awesome hike rating scale that he uses, which I think we're going to need to like start using that when we talk about our hike. So his scale is it starts at the easiest reference is difficult, and the next one is so difficult it's not worth the patch, and then the worst rating is insanely difficult, stay in bed.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
So
we could definitely, we'll use that with your permission, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that is wicked cool.
It's really good. So you, so eventually, Ken, you finished the 4,000 footers. All four of you did the majority of the hikes together. You wrote the book, and you got back in shape a little bit, had some good sort of memories that you generated, and then foolishly you decided to keep going. Right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I call it a disease. It's a disease. It just gets into your blood, and you can't stop. So I had a lot of people contacting me saying, "Oh, you've got to do a book on the 52 with a view." And I really didn't even, I guess I had heard about it. I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't really look into it a whole lot. When I started looking into it, I realized that, I had probably knocked off about 20 of them just from doing these conditioning hikes with Keith. So I'm like, oh man, I can do that. I've already got a head start on it. So this time I started, I had to go back to those 15 or 20 hikes that I'd previously done and try to remember as much, because I wasn't journaling on those a whole lot. And so I had to, look into that. And then when from that point on, everyone I hiked, I started taking better notes and a little, and adding different things to it, and getting a lot more scientific into things that were happening in hiking, making better reviews, like how to tell the weather. And, this book that's coming out, and actually it is available. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it is available already on Amazon. But it does have really good information there on skills that can be developed. And it was. I think I ended up actually doing like 55 because some of them that I had done were delisted, but they still counted. So I went back and did the 52 list, but I had already done 3 delisted ones, so I ended up doing 55 of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow,
that's a similar journey to me, because I was like, I think we were doing these lists around the same time. I just finished actually about 2 weeks ago with the 52 with a view and the 4,000 footers. So, in your opinion, what is there a difference between these two lists? How do you sort of explain the personalities of these two groups of clusters of mountains?
So I definitely think that there are some easier ones. Obviously Willard is a very popular hike, and it's only a mile. It's only a mile and a half distance, and it's pretty easy the whole going. But I wouldn't say that they're easier, because there's some of those 52 hikes that are brutal. I mean, they're just as rugged. The terrain is just as challenging. There's technical aspects to them. They can kick your butt just as much as anything else.
Yeah, that's what I say to people too. Is like Shelburne, Mariah, getting out to the Bald Face Loop,
Bald Faces,
Sandwich
Beautiful.
Dome. Like those are tough hikes, and they're tougher than a fair number of the 4,000 footers.
Yeah. So the first time I did Bald Faces, we did all 4 of them. Dave and I did all 4 of them. And so you have, what is it, Eastman, and then South Baldface, North Baldface, and Eagle Crag.
Yep.
And we did those 4, and then we saw the dome, and we're like, I wonder what it's like to do the dome. Go up South Baldface. That was a mistake. Again, Dave the athlete, we hit the rocks. Now everybody says, and all the references and everything you look at, they say, don't do it when it's wet. Don't do it when it's wet.
Right.
I thought it was going to be dry, and we hit those cliffs, and Dave was gone. He's just like a mountain goat. He's not normal. He's not human. I think he's got cloven feet. So he was gone, and I was left on my own, like try to figure out how to go over these ledges. And I came to a couple of them that were like beveled, and there's running water pouring down them, and they're slimy. And I just, my life passed before my eyes, and actually was kind of boring. So I did scramble up over those rocks and managed to get to the top. But that was quite a hike. That's really wow.
Yeah,
there's no 4,000 footer that is going to put that one in the dust. That's a pretty tough hike right there.
Yeah, it sure is. Generally, people do it counterclockwise.
Yeah.
But hey.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Welch Dickey here. You know what I mean? It's like people typically do it counter because of Welch.
Yeah.
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 But hey, who knew?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that one I did do counterclockwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's so ingrained over here at Welch Dickey that if you're coming down Welch going clockwise, and people have done the trail before that you're passing, they'll get on your case like, what are you doing? Like, I've had people like verbally attack me for coming down Welch. Like, it's okay. I got this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah. But anyway.
And Ken, so you've hit these 100 peaks across the two lists. What would you say is your handful of favorite mountains that you've hiked?
Wow. Lafayette, Lincoln, that ridge walk is second to none. Actually, my son is search and rescue out in Tahoe, California, and he bought me a book for Christmas of the 100 most popular hikes in the world, and Lafayette and Lincoln is one of them.
Oh yeah.
Which that's just a beautiful hike. The ball faces, really, really gorgeous. Some of the littler ones that people probably aren't familiar with if they're not doing lists, like Rogers Ledge, the view out there is just amazing. But yeah, I think those are some of the, I'm trying to think what else are like some of the more memorable ones. Obviously some of the presidentials are, the presidentials, they're the jewel and the crown of the peaks. But even though I did Washington just a few months ago with Keith, I got to say I'm not a fan anymore. You get to the top, there's 300-400 people up there.
Yeah, I know.
It takes a little bit of the prestige away.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to defend Mount Washington is that there's nothing better than going in there and getting a couple of hot dogs.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Hike, which is great.
Yeah.
Like, that is the one thing I every time I complain about the crowds, I'm like, well, there's hot dogs.
Yeah. Keith thought he had lost me, which isn't uncommon. I got a GPS system that is broken. But I was in there having a bowl of chili. He should have known better.
That's too funny.
So Ken, can you get into a little bit about the new book? What's the name of the new book and the sort of the format and talk a little bit about the process of writing this one?
So because everybody was really on my case about writing one about the 52. I had no desire to write another book. Like I said, I'm really not an author. But everyone kept saying you got to do the 52. You get to do. So the second one is called "They Said They Wanted More." So it's kind of puts it back on them. And it's about the 52. But one of the things I did differently in this book is I reached out to more contributors. So I have Lieutenant Nealon, Fish and Game, that gave an article. I have Ken McGray, who authors the guidebook on the 52, turned in an article. Another author, Matt Landry. Dan Schwensky, I can't pronounce his last name. You know who I'm talking about? Yeah. Dan Schwensky. Yeah. He's written some books. Oh, yeah.
He's like a historian, right?
Yeah. He wrote an article, wonderful articles. And then I had about 7 or 8 other hikers that turned in articles, funny stories that happened to them on different hikes. So it's spread out a little bit more, these are like all interspersed in there.
That's neat.
And then I've done some research. So when I'm huffing and puffing and can barely make it, and for some reason, these other 3 guys that I hike with, they say I whine and complain, and I don't think that's true at all. But when I'm struggling, I would just tell them, I always say, it's small lung syndrome. I've got small lung syndrome, and so it's hard to breathe. And then also altitude sickness. You know, I'm a seacoast guy. I was born and raised in Portsmouth. So, you know, if I get above 1,000 feet. So I scientifically break that down in the book. Like it's science. Follow the science, right? Don't we hear that a lot today? Follow science. It's science. And I get into that. And they bust my chops about the weather. So there's like a little side article in there on how a mountain man tells the weather, and you know, so it's humorous. It's all factual. You know, they get mad at me. They're popular. Like Ian, you got to tell the dentist story.
Oh yeah, so my dentist is over in Hillsborough. I lived right next door to it, and I went to get my teeth cleaned. And the dental hygienist went back, and the dentist assistant asked her if that was the Ian Kenny. And so the dental assistant came in, and she was like, "Are you the one in the book?" And I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." She's like, "They said it would be fun." I was like, "Oh, Jesus, yeah, no, that is me. Yeah, I hike with him." I was like, "Wow,
funny."
Yep,
it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a small world.
Yeah, it is.
And Dave is really known. You know, when he was chief of police, he's connected with so many people, and now he's in municipal insurance. He's connected with more town people, managers, and things like that. And people that are in hiking, they'll say, "Hey, I just bought this book, and I noticed that was you on the cover. You were in that book." And so he's like, "Yeah." So I made these guys famous, and you'd think they'd be more appreciative, but man, they ride me like a jockey on Buttercup. I mean, it's horrible.
Having close friends is important because you don't want they will keep you in check. As soon as you start blowing up, they will bring you back to earth for sure. So
true. That.
So any close search and rescue calls, any field attempts at hikes, any good stories around getting in trouble out there? Because that's really what we care about the most.
So I am a hard learner.
Right now they're looking at each other like, should I tell them this story?
Yeah, there's something
brewing.
So something. So I'm 60. I'm 63 now, and something happens. When you get into those 60s, things change. And Ian is the youngest, and I'm 63, and he always wants to hike on these like 90-degree days. So they call me PK for Pastor Ken, and like, "Hey PK, let's do a hike. And I'm like, no, it's too hot. Oh, come on, So we had done Smarts Mountain, and in the winter, and we got halfway snowshoeing, which I detest, and I was just dying. I had given blood, and I didn't realize that after you give blood, your red blood cells are gone, and so you don't have things to carry oxygen to the rest of your body.
I would have never thought that would be a thing. Who would have thought?
It is a huge... Don't give blood and hike, I'll tell you. At least not within the same proximity. So we turned around that first time in the winter. I just couldn't breathe, and I might have been whining a little bit. I mean... So he calls me up, "Let's go hiking." I'm like, "It's hot, it's like 90. It's not, it's only 80. So we go and do Smarts Mountain. He told me it was going to be like a 7-mile hike. I only brought 2 liters of water, and that that's my fault. I do carry a life straw. So we start hiking, and it's fairly warm, and it's muggy. It's humid. It's muggy. Dear God, we get out there. I struggled all the way out. I ran out of energy. I had already drank 1 liter of water just getting there, and that's really not a lot. But by the time we were coming back, I mean, the sun was, it was noon. It was 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
That hot afternoon sun.
And when you hit the rock, the heat was wafting up off of the rock as well as down, from the sun. And I felt like I was in an oven, just being baked on every direction. And I had run out of water, and I started getting, dehydrated, and it's heat sickness. I think it's not it's not like sunstroke. I think it's like heat exhaustion. That's it. And so I mean, like, I just about like passed out. I got wheezy, and I just sat there trying to recover. Recover your heart rate, your breathing, and it wasn't recovering too easy. And Ian was gracious. He stayed there with me. He didn't abandon me. And I'm like, it's really hot. And so I'm looking at him like, got any hydration on you? Like, hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod. Like, I'm dying over here. So he's gracious enough to give me half of what he had left over, which I suppose he's got to look after himself, even though I was dying. I was perishing right there before his eyes. But that was a close call. That was, that just woke me up to sometimes you got to suck it up and carry the weight you need. The thing is about a life straw, they're absolutely useless if there's no water around. And there was like no water anywhere on that hike.
Yeah.
I would have just...
Yeah.
Were you saying it was winter? Or no, this is summer. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, same thing with winter, though, if everything's frozen.
Yeah.
But yeah. That's funny.
So it was funny because he's like, it's only 80. We stopped at a store because I was just going to buy hydration. I didn't care what they had, liquid. I probably would have drank brake fluid if they had. So, and I asked the proprietor, how hot is it today? And both him and his wife simultaneously in harmony said it's 90. And I was like, there you go. I knew it was going to be way too hot. How do you defend yourself, Ian, from that?
Best part about this hike is when we get to the store, he goes and he buys a plain bottle of water and he buys a flavored bottle of water. The plain bottle of water was dumped over his head, so he gets outside, unknowingly cracks the strawberry one, dumps it over his head, so all you can smell is strawberries the entire ride home.
Oh, jeez.
That's awesome.
Funny. So did you make it did you have to turn around or did you make it to the top?
No, we made it in and out. Yeah, we summited and came back out.
Smarts is the one with that's got the fire tower on top, right? Is that the one with the cabin right up there, and then it's got the beautiful outhouse that's like wide open.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I had a close call on my my Pemi Loop. I did a Pemi Loop on a day that was supposed to be forecast to 95, so I started like people do at like 2:30 in the morning and got to Lafayette by about 11 or so, and that's when the heat started kicking in. I made it across Garfield Ridge Trail, but by the time I got to Bondcliff, it hit me. I had that heat exhaustion moment, and I was just I wouldn't say delirious, but I was fretting every step and wondering if I was going to get my goal was to get to that one water crossing that's below Bondcliff as you're heading back to Lincoln Woods Road. And thank God I made it, but man, scary. It can really, because you do get to the point where you're soaked initially with sweat and your body's not cooling off, but then you stop sweating, and that's really scary. Fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So this book it's out. You can get it on Amazon. We will we'll put a link in the show notes, and we'll do a little bit of advertising through a couple of posts on our Instagram and Facebook pages. So this would be a good book for anybody that's looking for a Christmas present for a hiker. If you haven't got the 4,000 footer book, you can get them as a twofer. And the way I would suggest that people do this is I would get both books, and it's just another tool in your arsenal, because not only is there's some good stories, and I haven't read the 52 of the View book yet, but there's some good stories in the 4,000 footer book. And I sort of look at it as another way that you can sort of get details on the hikes, because he does talk about, Ken talks about the terrain and the features of the mountains as well. So it's just another informational tool that you can utilize. Very good. So, Ken, one other area that I did want to ask you about, you're a pastor, and you deal with probably a lot of interesting topics. One of the things that I'm curious to get your perspective on is the sort of hiking culture in general, and sort of the good and the bad, and then maybe a little bit about your perspective about, is there anything that we can do in the hiking community to just be better from your perspective? Can you talk a little bit about, what you see amongst your fellow hikers?
Yeah, I would encourage anyone to hike. And I know with COVID, a lot of people have turned to the outdoors. We live in such a high, stressful community. Everybody's at such a breakneck speed doing everything that they do. And to just get out in nature is so refreshing. As a coach, especially doing wellness coaching sometimes with people, we have a sympathetic nervous system that kind of, it's the gas pedal. It's what makes us go and accomplish, but we can't live there. So there's a parasympathetic system that needs to be tapped into so that there's checks and balances. Mm-hmm. And something like getting out in nature is something that absolutely causes that parasympathetic nervous system to fire. It's relaxing. And I think that's wonderful. Like in my expression, I would say God gives us nature, and we turned around and turned it into cities. So I would encourage anyone to hike. And I've met wonderful people on the trails. And I find, moms out there laughing their heads off, having a blast. You see young kids, you see all kinds of people. It never amazes me. And then in the summer months, you got the tour buses coming. It looks like the United Nations out there, right? I mean, just like all kinds of people. And I think they do come in on tour buses because you have to get out of the trail as 50 people are going by. College students, you get to see what the latest sneakers are as they're going up, the presidentials or flip-flops. But one of the things that, man, this just really, we have to be better at leave no trace.
Oh,
when I did a sunrise, matter of fact, Ian was with us, and Ian's now wife was with us, and Dave, and we did a sunrise on Chicora. And as the sun came up, I was sitting on the rocks just watching the sun come up. And then as it came up, because it was dark, I didn't really see my surroundings that well. But when it came up, I looked down, and in the crevice right there at my feet was an empty beer can. And I'm like, come on, seriously, you hiked it in when it was 16 ounces. You can't hike it out when it's 0.5 ounces.
Yeah, that's a shame.
So that's where I think the hiking community as a whole can do a lot better. And sometimes I think it's probably the novice hikers that really, they don't understand it. They're just doing a weekend warrior type thing, and they don't understand, leave no trace means leave no trace. Coming down, what hike was it? Dave and I did. I think it was Osceola. Up comes this young girl, 22, with her boyfriend or husband or whatever, and he's listening to just boombox. Which
I hate that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But then what really got me is about another 1/10 of the mile down the trail. There's 3 batteries laying in the middle of the trail. Like his batteries died, he changed them, just left them in the trail and kept going. And I can't say it was him because I didn't see it, but I'm just putting 2 to 2 together. Maybe it's an unfair equation, but why are you leaving dead batteries in the trail? Just so a lot of times I'll pack stuff like that out myself because I just I don't like to see trash or things like that out there.
Yeah. And masks. Will you pick up the mask and stick it in your pack? Not I.
And the blue bags of dog poop.
Oh, yeah. No kidding. Oh.
It depends. I will pick that stuff up because I have because I just do work around the house, and I think COVID's turned me into a germ-phobic maniac anyway, but I have those surgical gloves, not surgical gloves, but the gloves, and I have those in my pack sometimes, and if I see something really gross, I'll just put the gloves on and then pick the gross thing up, put it in the trash bag, and then throw the glove away occasionally. Yeah. So I've picked up some gnarly stuff, and I have picked up those dog poop bags before.
Oh boy.
It is something.
Well, I wanted to go. I wanted to go back to Ken had said that he had been struggling for 1.5 years with plantar fasciitis, and then he basically nothing was working, so he turned to the power of prayer to solve that. Can we dive into that a little bit here, because I think that there's a fair number of people that deal with these repetitive injuries, and whether it's through prayer or other means that if the physical therapy is not working. I'm curious, what do you think, Ken? I mean, obviously you're a pastor, so I think it's pretty clear that you feel like the power of prayer really solved it for you. But can you talk a little bit about it? Has plantar come back, or was it just a one-time fix for you?
No, it never came back. It was very painful, and like I said, I had it for 1.5 years. So it took me out of the woods. It took me out of hiking. It took me out of a lot of things. And I did go to a doctor. I did get a cortisone shot. I call it the stick from hell. That was one of the most painful things ever. I mean, he literally went right through my heel, under that back heel bone.
Yeah, you're right. That's the worst.
That was really that was something. And like I said, almost every Sunday we offer prayer for anyone who wants prayer for any need. Maybe it's a financial need, maybe it's a need in a relationship, or maybe it's something that they're struggling with a sickness or a malady or something like that. We've seen things happen. We've seen people get healed. And I don't know, for some reason, as the pastor, I'm like, maybe I should go for prayer, because it was 1.5 years that I was out of this thing. And the guy that prayed for me, he prayed over me, and he said, when I went up, he said, from a 1 to 10, he goes, where would you say your pain is right now? And this was after preaching 2 services and standing for a long time. I said, seriously, like right now it's like a 9.5. And he prayed over me, and he goes, what's it now? And I said, seriously, it's like a 9.5. Like nothing happened. He goes, well, just go home and give it some time. I'm like, all right. I went home. I went to bed. Monday, I woke up, and it was noticeable. It dropped down to a 7. And I'm like, and I noticed it, and that got me really excited. So the next week, I went back to him and I said, hey, I want you to pray for me again. And it went down to like a 5.5, and like week after week for 5 consistent weeks. And that last week, it was gone. That's great. So I was a little skittish, and I'm like, I'm not going to go do an 11-mile hike and get out there 6 miles and it kicks in and I'm in pain. And, so I just started like a 1/10 of a mile, 1/4 of a mile, 1/2 a mile, couple miles, 6 miles, 10 miles. And then, after I'm doing 10, 13 miles in Pawtuckaway, I'm like, I think I'm ready to,
walk on water.
But yeah, I'm going to push the envelope and I'm going to go for a 4,000 footer. And and I never had any problems again after that point.
Wow.
So
what is your professional assessment here? What happened? Do we have a miracle?
Oh, hey, yeah, I would think so. I grew up in the church. You might be interested in this. My story is I grew up in the Pentecostal denomination, and then I was exposed to the Catholic side of things on my dad's side of the family. So I'm like a hybrid. I sort of experienced both faiths growing up, and I totally believe in the power of prayer and miracles and everything.
So you went from left to right, and I went from right to left. I grew up Catholic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now I'm Pentecostal.
Oh, come on, really? Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I love and respect both faiths, and I think it's
absolutely.
great. I've seen personally a lot of interesting things over my long 52 years, Mike. But I'm all in with the baby Jesus.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I hike with the guys with Keith and Dave and Ian is because I firmly believe that anyone can be rehabilitated. And I haven't seen a lot of success yet, but I'm still hanging in there with these guys and seeing a little bit. Oh man!
It's sort of just one other side topic. It's funny between Pentecostals or Protestants and Catholics. It's like Pentecostals are more like give your burden to God and He'll take care of it. Whereas the Catholics are more like wear that wool jacket and suffer because it's good for those poor souls in purgatory and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a difference in approach, but fun. We could talk about that for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah. So I guess I ran through all the questions that I had. Again, like I said, we will be posting up in the show notes links to details on how you can purchase both books. And, I guess my final thought, Ken, on this is as I was going through and sort of putting the script together, I've recently completed the some hiking list myself, and I did try to take a little bit of time to reflect on sort of what are the key points that I realized around, what were the epiphanies for me. And the first one that I came up with was that, we do this activity called peak bagging, and I put a little post up on the 4,000 footer group, and the first point I basically said is, what I learned from this is that, you should be looking to bag more friends than peaks through the activities that you do with this hiking. And it sounds like you've really embodied that with, your core group of friends, and then having the ability to sort of reach out and make relationships with the search and rescue teams, and then actually getting, it sounds like 7 or 8 people to contribute to your next project. So I think that it sounds like you've got a great story to tell as far as doing this in a way where you've built a lot of different relationships. So I don't know, that was my kind of takeaway from reading your book and then thinking about like how I completed my lists and sort of watching you complete yours.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think what it taught me is that if you set a goal and if you have enough stick-to-itiveness, no matter what that goal is, you can accomplish it. And it was just a matter of, healing from that dreaded hike and getting back out and doing another one, and then another one and another one. And, congratulations on finishing a couple of lists yourself. And I think that people, just start off with one smaller hike and enjoy it. The other thing is enjoy the whole process. It's not about seeing that summit. It's about finding the peak you want to do, looking at the maps, picking the trails, packing your pack, making sure you get the 10 essentials, all of that stuff. The guys I hike with, we constantly bust on one another. We're picking on one another, making fun of one another. But honestly, these guys are the best. We've saved each other's bacon, and we pulled each other's bacon out of the fire a number of times. And, I've done a lot of solo hiking, but there's nothing like, being out there in the woods with a close friend, sharing that experience, meeting other people on the hikes. It's all part of the wonderfulness of hiking. It's really great. If I could, are you guys getting ready to segue into another?
We're going to move into search and rescue, but I have one question for you, but go ahead. Whatever you want to say.
Well, I'll answer your question.
Well, you were ready to talk about something, right?
I was just going to say that Dave and Ian and Keith and I, we started another out branch. We've started a little group called White Mountain Approved, where we are now starting to do gear reviews. We're on Instagram under White Mountain Approved.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Okay.
Yeah. So we're doing gear reviews. We are going to start selling some novelty T-shirts.
Starting to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what got this set up.
Yeah.
All right, I got it. Okay.
Yeah,
I have seen it.
Anybody wants to check that out, and we're going to do some fun things, such as, like in the month of May, if you can spot Dave on a trail and recognize him, we'll stop and shoot a gear review right then and there with you. Like you can review a piece of gear that you like or, you particularly care for. So we're going to mix it up, do some nutty things, and just have some fun with it. Again, just kind of like, working with and bringing the whole hiking community together a little bit.
That's fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah, I will. I'll add that to the show notes as well, and then we can link that across our social media. What's the newest gear that you guys are looking at right now?
I did a review on a couple of different headlamps, from a Energizer from Walmart to a Black Diamond to the newest Petzl, the 450 lumen one that just came out, which is now my new favorite, and I did a review on those. We did, what do you got, Ian? What else have we done?
We've got some on some base layer. We're doing some videos. We're trying to have fun with it. We've got some just quick videos of us. We're trying to do it on the trail, on the peaks when we're there, with nice views in the background. And then we're also doing just pictures of the gear with us using it and explaining a little bit.
Yeah, we're just having fun with it. We're just saying, we're saying, we do all our gear reviews from the peaks of mountains, not from living rooms. We're just being nutty and silly and crazy.
That's great. Well,
awesome.
Right. So here's my question: critical incident stress debriefings. I'm sure you've done some
with the Raymond PD
as a chaplain. Because our first rescue here first story is actually a recovery. So I'm always fascinated to hear about those services and maybe just to talk about it briefly, how you handle critical incident stress debriefings, if that's what you're doing for the fire department. PD. Okay. Maybe it's a little different, but certainly in search and rescue, we've had our share of events that have called for a chaplain to come in and talk with us and this and that, and maybe just to talk about that briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things about critical stress debriefing is what you're trying to circumvent is people developing post-traumatic stress syndrome. PTSD, the way I like to define it, PTSD is a natural response to an unnatural event. In other words, it's not natural for us to have to try to rescue dying people or recover a dead body. That's not normal. Right. And so when people encounter those kinds of high stress situations, it can leave a lingering effect. And some people, it doesn't bother at all. Some people, maybe it bothers, but they just repress it, and that's not good either. And some people, it just physically and outwardly bothers them. And so if people can talk about that, talk about what it was that bothered them about the incident, why it bothered them, sometimes it's just a catharsis to talk it out, just get it off of your shoulders. And I would just say that if there's anyone that really struggles even more, with an incident like that, maybe some coaching, as a life coach, I see people move forward in all kinds of situations. I know my brother was a firefighter down in Sarasota, Florida, and his wife died early, and he was leaving the fire department. Everybody told him, don't leave. He's got 13 years in. Mm-hmm. But he was also a paramedic, and he told me, he said, listen, I just couldn't do that anymore. Pulling bodies out of cars and stuff like that. And he says, I just couldn't deal with it anymore. So it builds up. Sometimes there's post-traumatic stress from seeing something in the moment that's, live, and it's shocking, and it stays with you. And sometimes it's a slow, repetitive build. Right. You go on a rescue or a recovery again and again and again. And it's like it builds. It's something that escalates.
Yeah, because that's the angle that I've sort of been cognizant of with search and rescue, and I try to watch members, and I watch myself with that, and I've always thought that, like, even though this is just an ankle fracture, this is really stressful. It's like, it's midwinter, somebody's freezing up there. We got to hustle. It definitely adds up over the years. So that's interesting. What should people look out for in their own lives, like any red flags or signs, like,
if it's causing you, if it's a memory that you just won't leave your mind, it's just like stuck in your mind and you keep dwelling on it, keep thinking on it, that would be a red flag. Mm-hmm. If it starts impairing your sleep or your diet, those are other red flags. If you find yourself maybe retreating inside of yourself a little bit more than you normally would, that would, be another red flag. So those are all things to look for.
Substance abuse. I'm sure you see that too.
Substance abuse. Yeah. Self-medication.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, what do you cover with life coaching? I know that's a pretty broad question, but what topics?
So life coaching, I mean, the simplest explanation is it's not mentoring, it's not consulting, it's not counseling. Life coaching is a relationship around a conversation that a person has with a coach, where the coach is trained specifically to listen very, very deeply, and then ask questions to draw out knowledge that a person has but they don't know they have. We believe that a person is whole and complete in and of themselves. They have the goods, they have the answers, they just need help figuring that out. Gotcha. And so when you ask these thought-provoking questions that create an aha, like all of a sudden, the synapses are firing and things are happening, then they come up with their solution. They come up with the goals for those solutions. They come up with who's going to hold them accountable, and they actually act on it because it's their ideas. They've got skin in the game. It all came from them. Years ago I used to do counseling, and I would tell people do A, B, and C. They wouldn't do A, B, and C. But when they come up with A, B, and C, they have ownership of it, and there's like 90% more likelihood that they're going to act on it.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, how I've always thought about that is, like, when you're hiking, and sometimes you're on in a wilderness section or something, and you know how to hike, you're prepared, but you can't find the trail, and you have to stop and be like, did I take a wrong turn or whatever? And then you have to sort of look around, and then all of a sudden, like, the trail just appears in front of you. I feel like a lot of times, like, in our lives, like, we're on our trail, we just sort of step off for a minute, and we just can't see that path. And I think I've had a little bit of experience with sort of mentors and life coaches, and I think the way you describe it is sort of like you're helping to just sort of like see the path when we couldn't see it clearly, but we're close to it, but we just didn't get on it right. So
right, yeah, that's a great analogy. I mean, I never miss trails or turns or anything like that, do I? Never. They're always like, "Hey, PK, when you go down that trail, let's taking you back out to Route 16." I'm like, I don't know.
But when you do that, and then all of a sudden, like, you stop, and you're like, oh yeah, now it's so obvious, but it wasn't a minute ago.
Yeah. No, I always tell them, like, well, no, I thought it was a deer down there or something, and it was a moose.
And there you have it. Chris Beebe and Ken Bosse, thank you guys so much for coming on the pod. And we will be back for episode 173 next week. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. Be safe out there. It looks like it's going to be fairly decent weather. And for next week, our special guest is a returning guest, Larry the Log. And he's going to come in and tell us about his adventures carrying that gigantic log across the nation. So it's going to be pretty epic. He's going to be in studio, and we may actually have another surprise guest as well. So take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at slasherpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us.